Kia ora and welcome to a Yarn Live. This is the Women in Data Science series, and my name is Ryan Ashton from Few Quiet Yarns. We have the first in a series of interviews with speakers from the event who are going to give us an introduction to themselves, a little snapshot of their career and how they got there, and also especially what they're going to be talking about. So without any further ado, I won't steal her thunder because we've got a lot to learn about Ernestynne Walsh. If I can hand over to you to introduce yourself, please, Ernestynne, we'll get the show started.
Ka pai. Well, tuatahi, tēnā koe Ryan, o tēnā koutou katoa. In terms of who I am, I want to start with my whakapapa and where I'm from. So, he uri no Ngāti Porou me te whanau apanui hoki. I'm from the East Coast and the Bay of Plenty area. Engari te puaki o I Pōneke. So I grew up here in Wellington. In terms of my mahi in the data science space, I am the Māori Data Service Lead at Nicholson Consulting, and I have been at Nicholson Consulting for 11 and a half years.
Excellent. I love that 11 years. We were talking about that before we got on. And it's a really good tenure and the ability to make an impact on what you're doing. So with that, let's have a look at some of the other aspects. You talk about being Māori Data Service Lead at Nicholson Consulting. Do you want to share a little bit about what you actually do for Nicholson Consulting in that space?
Yeah, sure. So to be honest, it is very... each day is varied, and so I know sometimes people think of data science as a very technical space, but there's also a lot of elements around creating change, communication, relationship management, and so really no 2 days are ever the same. In terms of some examples of mahi that we've done in this space, one of the first pieces of mahi I did was around leading a team to automate cover decisions at ACC. So we created a set of algorithms, machine learning algorithms, so that decisions in that space can be automated. In the past, when you hurt yourself, you'd be waiting, you'd go to the doctor, you'd wait for your letter from ACC, and you wouldn't really know whether or not you are covered, and that could be quite a stressful time. And so we created these models to help automate the decision-making process. So now if you hurt yourself and you're with your physio, your doctor, any healthcare provider, you can get a notification on your mobile phone, and the fastest we've seen is within 7 seconds. So it just provides a bit of relief knowing that someone... just having that clarity around who is covering the medical expenses. That was one of the first projects.
Oh, wow. That is really cool. I not long ago injured my shoulder and had that really super quick authentication that ACC would cover the rehab. And I didn't really think anything of it. But I do remember that it used to take a couple of weeks and you get a paper letter. But the lady at the reception was able to say, no, you've been authorized already. No problem. So good to meet one of the people that was involved in making it happen. That's really cool. So that leads on beautifully to our next question. And this is about your career and your career path. Now, the reason I shaped this question up is that from the outside, and we were talking about earlier before about you can't be what you can't see. And in some regards, when we look at people and we go, wow, look at that amazing person, what they've achieved, and think they've had this perfectly straight line of success. But in actual fact, a career can be a squiggly line, and there can be events and moments and things and ups and downs. So in short, people can think if they don't have the perfect picture, they're not going to get there. But in actual fact, nobody has the perfect picture. We all have a squiggly line. So with that, could you give us a healthy rundown of your career and some of the moments that you remember in that squiggly line to help paint a picture that there's many ways into data science. There's not an actual specific way that people think they should follow or be on path for.
Okay, so I started my journey at Victoria University in Wellington. Back then, I guess I'm kind of showing my age, we didn't have a data science program. It was called statistics, mathematics, computer science, anything else but data science. That really wasn't a term that was used back then. And so I studied for a Master of Statistics and Operations Research. It's more of a hands-on degree because with operations research, you're looking at optimizing imperfect situations. So we were doing things like trying to forecast sports round robin tables to make sure that everyone, got to play games, but they weren't all playing them at the same time and things like that. And what I found was that there were a lot of soft skills because the pathway I'd taken was through more of the management scenario and optimizing business type problems. So I finished the Master of Science, and that was at the time that there'd been a lot of major earthquakes in Aotearoa. And so the mahi I did for the Masters was around that optimization, that measuring prediction around earthquakes. So I finished that kaupapa, and I found it tricky to transition into the workforce. Everyone wanted someone who had experience already, but at the same time,
chestnut.
But the experience they wanted wasn't necessarily that you'd been a tutor or a research assistant at the university. And so I found it quite challenging to transition. And I told my supervisor that, and she was like, you've got a lot of great skills. It shouldn't be so hard. What I'm going to do is I'll put you in touch with my former postdoc, Todd Nicholson, because he studied the same topics as you, and maybe you guys can have a cup of tea and he can give you some advice. And so that initial meeting became a 3-month work trial, and that was developing a prototype to automate the ACC cover decisions. And then from there, the prototype was accepted, and there was the request to build the full suite of algorithms to automate cover decisions. So from there, Todd offered me a permanent role, and fast forward 11 and a half years later, I am still here. It's just been so many different pathways within Nicholson, and I think one of the big things that I've seen over the span of a decade is when I first started, people weren't really talking about Māori data sovereignty. It didn't really exist until the Māori advocacy group, Te Manaroraunga, started talking about Māori data sovereignty. And then people were interested, but they weren't quite sure how to look after and care for Māori data and give effect to some of the principles that Te Manaroraunga advocated for. But in our line of work, because we had a lot of kaimahi Māori, we just naturally had a specific way that we approached mahi that resonated with us. And so it meant that we ended up doing a lot of work with Māori data. Some of the mahi that we've done is a world first. So we created a te reo Māori microsimulation using the census information, using the integrated data infrastructure, which is a large government research database of administrative data and survey data. And so we were able to forecast a generation ahead, how many speakers there'll be, where they'll be. And it means that you can start making decisions now to revitalise te reo Māori, because it takes a generation to lose the language, but 3 generations to get it back. So that's one of the projects that's been very close to me, just particularly being a kaimahi Māori as well.
Absolutely. So if I don't know if you are current or present with the stats and facts from that work, but what is there some sort of way you can frame up the potential jumps or simulate the number of people speaking te reo now through to the simulation of the next generation? Like, what sort of numbers might we be talking about from one generation to the next?
it's definitely heading in the right direction, but things change a lot depending on the current climate. And so we're very lucky with the likes of Kohanga Reo, Kura Kaupapa Māori, evening classes at Te Wānanga Aotearoa and Te Atarangi. There's lots of opportunities to pick up te reo Māori, and with events such as Te Matatini being on a world stage, there's a lot more interest, and so things are heading in the right direction. But just in the past year or two, I probably don't need to elaborate too much, but
Yes.
just with the current government and priorities, I guess there is a risk that things could start to stall and lose momentum, or even worse, go backwards. But that's hard to see in the data because we've got a 2023 census, and these changes and policies and things like that are a bit more recent. So you'd then need to capture more data later to see the effect. But I hope we continue to head in the right direction. I'm hoping that there is enough critical mass in this space so that we don't end up in a scenario again where the language is struggling to survive.
Yeah. Now, if we think about who might be listening, we're on a range of channels from LinkedIn here, Facebook, YouTube, and obviously can be shared. So I want you to imagine that there's some young tuahine out there, still at school, asking, what's an algorithm? So if we can take it down to that very simple and a very practical for the potentially younger viewers that haven't come across the term, or it's not part of their daily work because they're not at work yet, they're still at school. If you could give us a bit of a basic explanation and connect some of what you've talked about with your work in a more appropriate level for younger viewers.
Yeah, ka pai. So with algorithms, what we're looking at is we're trying to, with the algorithms at least that we've been working with, is to mimic decision making. And so with an algorithm, what you do is you look at the data. So for instance, we looked at current te reo Māori speakers. And then what we did was we used that data to understand their pathway to acquire te reo Māori. And so an algorithm will help predict whether or not you're speaking te reo Māori, for instance. Mm-hmm. And you do that using data. So we've got data around, did the parents speak te reo Māori? Are they living in an area where there are a lot of te reo Māori speakers, like in Otaki, for instance? Are they going to kohanga? Are they going to kura kaupapa Māori? And so that helps paint a picture so that you're able to predict whether or not someone will be able to speak te reo Māori based on other people who have similar pathways through life.
So if I share back my understanding, the algorithms, like the equation, that takes data. So it's almost like if I put it into like a human conversation reference, I'd be asking, did they go to Kura Kaupapa? Do they have a lot of people around them that they can speak Māori with on a daily basis? Okay, that's a really good situation. So the algorithm takes into account each of these different attributes to then come up with some sort of score or answer that says, yes, this person meets the criteria. That means that they will become they're a te reo speaker now, and that they will help encourage or get another 5 people in the next generation over into te reo Māori. Is that kind of a basic way of thinking? Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. Always just trying to think of all the different people, because obviously through the LinkedIn audience, they'll all be business people and understand the high level stuff that you're talking about, but we also want to bring it down for the rangatahi. So just on that, I'm not sure if I'm jumping the gun in terms of talking about closing off the career question with the question about you've recently won a prestigious award. Could we ask you to share about the award that you won at Te Hapori Matahiko, please?
Hi, so I won the Te Hapori Matahiko Award for Corporate Change. So Te Hapori Matahiko, ngā mihi, thank you. Te Hapori Matahiko is the Māori digital and tech community. They were founded by Katie Brown and Lee Timutumu. And so as part of creating this community, they have several different initiatives, but one of them is an awards ceremony each year. This is the third year that they've had the awards, and I think it's really important because it creates a space where there's visibility, so others, rangatahi or people working in business, can see the amazing things that kaimahi Māori are doing out there in the digital tech community. And that can be used as a platform to help inspire others. So the Corporate Change Award is for driving kaupapa Māori initiatives within a corporate context, but they have maybe 14 different categories, everything from global categories to leadership, community. They've even got a Kaiawhina Award for those who sort of work in the background to coordinate and bring projects together, which is really important because a lot of these kaupapa, especially community ones, don't get off the ground without that type of work. So they're acknowledging a wide range of people with a wide range of skills. And the other thing I love about the awards is that they also have a tipu and a tōtara. So someone who's new and entering the industry who is seen as a rising star, and then those who have been in the industry for a lot longer and are more well established.
Yeah, I love the awards. I went last year, not this year in Christchurch. I couldn't make it, but I went last year, and it's just such a different vibe. I've got to say, and I guess community might be a bit of a simplified word to describe it, but there's just such a togetherness feeling and a real buzz compared to, say, your typical awards where everyone's in their little groups and that's about it. But when we were there, I think I walked around the room and every 2 seconds it was stopping to talk to someone else that I knew. We will get introduced to someone else, and everyone was just really connected. And as you say, having the award for, say, the leader and the junior, I think is the versions I'll use to explain it. Again, it shines a light on those that are coming up as well as those that are at the top. So yeah, I think it's really good. And obviously pure focus on Māori rather than here's one award for Māori at an award ceremony. So again, really putting a light on. And what it does, I think one of the exciting things is it does bring out so many amazing stories that we wouldn't have heard of otherwise. And part of Kiwi culture is a little bit not the Kumara doesn't talk about how sweet it is, so it's great to have these awards to be able to show how amazing everyone is. So congratulations on your win. Now let's have a look at our next question, which is going to be looking at what you're going to be speaking about at Women in Data Science. So we don't want you to share everything because that's why everyone's going to come to the event and hear what you're going to talk about. But if you'd be happy to give us a little bit more of a taster than what we've been able to read on the synopsis, I'm really keen and interested to hear about this myself, and obviously many others are as well. So over to you.
Mm-hmm. So more recently, I've completed and graduated with a Master of Māori and Indigenous Leadership. I think this is another amazing kaupapa, particularly because the way they've set it up is it's wānanga based. So rather than just sitting in a lecture theatre taking notes, each person is recognised in terms of having their own leadership experiences. So you go to a wānanga scenario and everyone is sharing their experiences under the guidance of some pukenga, some lecturers, as well as our po who led the kaupapa. And I did that kaupapa around 2022 to 2023. I was very fortunate. It was an amazing experience. And one thing I really loved about it is I wanted to get outside of Pōneke and meet different people and hear different perspectives. So this kaupapa, the Master of Māori Indigenous Leadership, goes wherever the community demand is. And so I joined the Taranaki cohort. And another interesting thing about the kaupapa is that you don't actually need a bachelor's degree to start the masters. They recognise that everyone has leadership qualities, and so they just ask for 3 years experience demonstrating leadership within the community, and then you write a letter explaining your why and what you want to do. So as part of the master's program, we write up a research essay, and my one was around Māori data sovereignty implementation in the public service. And so I found that I wanted to research this topic because it lined up really nicely with the Māori data service area and the mahi we were doing. And I often found that people were approaching us asking for guidance on implementation, but it came across as quite fragmented, like different organizations were asking the same things. And so what I wanted to see was a holistic view of what are people doing in this space when it comes to Māori data sovereignty, Māori data governance, and paint a broad picture about what people were doing, but also what were the lessons learned, because I felt that would be helpful for the public service, but also others, whether in the private sector or working in NGOs, others who have an interest in protecting Māori data.
Awesome. A couple of questions on the messages, and they might be bigger than Ben Hur for the time that we have, but let's see how we go. So if I heard you right, your master's was on how Māori data sovereignty is used and applied within the public service, and you found that there are a range of organisations with the same questions doing slightly different things, and then obviously a lot of the same things. So there'd be probably a range of people that would like to understand, what is Māori data sovereignty compared to, say, data sovereignty? What are the differences, and what are the important things that people need to understand, just at the high level?
Mm-hmm. So that's a good partai, and not a silly one either, because a lot of people do ask that question when we work with clients, for instance. So with Māori data sovereignty, we talk about protecting the rights and interests of Māori data, and where sometimes there is some confusion does come about with data sovereignty. People often talk about where the data is stored and what jurisdiction or what legislation, what relevant laws apply to that data. But Māori data sovereignty goes beyond just where the data is stored. It looks at having specific accountabilities to those who are represented in the data, and also making sure that benefits flow back to those people who are represented in the data. Even though it's specifically about Māori data, when we have shared this work and collaborated with clients, they often talk about, once we've explained it, this approach sounds like a good approach for data in general. And we talk about things like consent and making sure that the appropriate mechanisms are in place so that people feel that they have informed consent and there's clarity about what they're consenting to. People say, that sounds like good practice in general. So I think that's one of the big takeaways as well from working in this area, that there's a lot of, not sure what word I'd use, more ethical, more beneficent ways of working with data that apply beyond just looking at data about Māori or for Māori.
Yeah. Now, I love that point, and you saw me react when you said that a lot of people say this is a great way to look after data in general. And let me see if I get this right. My sort of practical example is that with Māori data sovereignty, say Facebook came out now, then all the data that they take and sell of all of the people that use Facebook from a Māori data sovereignty perspective, it's actually being aware of and looking at, hey, they're taking and selling our data, and that as they're making a profit off it in some sort of exchange, because we're getting use of the platform for free, but we should also be getting some of the profit from our data. And it's a weird thing in society how going back quite a while, Microsoft used to get absolutely hammered about different things because they were the big giant. And then when it came out that Apple iPhone was tracking where every phone call was made, people were like, don't care about it. The attitude had shifted from, doing the right things to accepting the wrong things because we got something else for it. And that's one of the things I love about multi-data sovereignty is it brings it back to what is right. And I think a great example of it that I was aware of, or am aware of, and there's probably others, but one I'm aware of is Whare Hauora, created by Hiria Tarangi. And with the data that is collected through that system, which is about healthy homes or not healthy homes, then the data is based on permission. So the users have to give permission, but then they also can be rewarded by any profits that are generated out of the analysis of the data. And when that came out, I was blown away at the concept because it was the first time this concept of giving money back to the people that were providing their data had came around. So in a lot of ways, Māori data sovereignty and a lot of things that are coming out of Te Ao Māori into Western society are actually the things that should have always been that Western society sort of got a bit lackadaisical on, and Te Ao Māori principles and Māori data sovereignty are bringing us back to where things should be. So a lot of thanks to be given to the work that you and others have done in the space and how it's shifted, I guess, our whole country, not just for Māori, but for everybody. Ka pai. Now, just looking at that and looking at time, we've got a few minutes up our sleeve, and we've got one last question, which is, what's your favourite inspiring story of WiDS through history, excluding yourself, of course? But was there some story that particularly took your attention and that you'd like to share that was an inspiration for you?
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of amazing stories, stories locally, stories globally, but for me, the ones that resonate are the ones that are closer to home. And so if I had to pick an example, I think I'd look at the Māori Women's Welfare League and the mahi that Whina Cooper did at a time where things were very difficult. There'd been massive land loss. People were moving into towns but struggling to find work. People couldn't get accommodation. And so with all of these troubles, the whakaaro was that they need to collect data, statistics, they need to do surveying so that they can understand the state of affairs for Māori people, but also look at ascertaining the needs and aspirations of Māori. And so what I love about that is it's a local example, it's a Māori-led example, and I feel like what we've seen there has repeated itself in more recent forums. If we think about trying to improve the census response rates, the 2023 census had a similar approach where there were events, there were Māori carrying out the surveys, and so it had a different interaction, engagement, perception, which helped with more data capture. And with that data, it means that you can then look at providing initiatives, whether it's looking at more housing, more education programs. And so I feel like that's one of the early examples that talks about data, the benefits of data for Māori within Aotearoa. And you can see this in the movie Whina as well. definitely recommend watching that if you want to learn more about the impacts, the history of Aotearoa, the impact of land loss, the land schemes, but also urban migration, and the challenges that resulted, and the land march, of course.
Yeah, look, movies like that are so important because they give us the history that we never taught in schools, and that then opens us up to be able to look at more history. And that's been part of my personal journey, and I know for a lot of other Kiwis it is as well. And it's been quite surprising to discover the truth of our history. That would be another discussion that we can look at that. But we're just on time now, so we'd like to say, tēnā rā atu koe. Thank you very much for all your time, your effort, for being on here, and especially for speaking at the WiDS event, where you can attend for free and come along and hear all of the speakers, and of course, especially our special guest in this case, Ernestynne Walsh. So with that, would you like to sign off for us today with any final thoughts for the viewers, and then encourage them to get along to WiDS?
I think I'd like to acknowledge Women in Data Science, WiDS. I believe they're up to 8 years running within New Zealand. I remember going to the first event, and I think I really need to acknowledge Kate College and the mahi she did, because I think a lot of us know it's really hard to run community type events, mainly trying to get sponsorship for new events, but also finding people available to help. And I do remember the very first event. I was one of the people who offered to help. And one of my memories of that event was, we just got in and we made it happen. I created one of those walls you stand in front of that has all the sponsors' names. You think of like big sporting events. But to give an indication of the budget we were working on, we printed out A4s that had the Women in Data Science logo, and then we essentially stuck them all together so that people could have a photo against the WiDS backgrounds. So it's fantastic to see that we've gone from that scenario to the current WiDS format, where there's even more amazing speakers, there's scholarships. It's really grown over the past 8 years, and I really want to acknowledge Kate and the team for driving that initiative within Aotearoa.
Yeah, bye. Well, that's amazing. Thank you very much, and of course, got to add thank you for being part of WiDS from the first event, and that's a fantastic story about sticking the A4 posters on, and that is making things happen. And from humble beginnings, and all the effort of everybody, great to recognise Kate and the team, but also the likes of yourself from, I assume volunteering would be the correct description back then, through to now being a speaker and talking about all the amazing work that you've achieved, which we've just covered with some highlights through today's session. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and ka kite to you, and ka kite anō to everybody else. Once again, thank you very much, Ernestynne Walsh, for being a speaker on Yarn Live, the Women in Data Science New Zealand 2025 series, and of course, more especially for being a speaker at the event on August 18th. And of course, we hope to see everybody register to come along and hear all the speakers, including your session. So with that, thank you very much.
Ngā mihi. Mā te wā.
Mā te wā.